Sir, you need to leave. Excuse me, we just ordered our food. You're making other customers uncomfortable.
We're sitting here eating breakfast. What are you talking about?
Don't make me ask again. Leave.
Officer Derek Whitmore had 11 years on the Riverside Police Department and 0 complaints in his file when he walked into Maggie's Diner on a Sunday morning and made the worst decision of his career. What happened next would cost the city over $1 million, destroy his reputation, and expose a pattern of discrimination that had been hiding in plain sight for years. Marcus and Tanya Johnson were celebrating their daughter's 8th birthday. They'd ordered pancakes, they were waiting for their food. They hadn't raised their voices, hadn't caused a scene, hadn't violated a single rule. But Officer Whitmore decided they didn't belong there. And what started as a birthday breakfast would trigger a federal civil rights investigation, national media attention, and in a lawsuit that would force an entire police department to answer for decades of silent complicity. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If you care about stories like this, stories that expose injustice and hold people accountable, hit that subscribe button right now. Your support helps us bring more truth to light. Now let's get into what really happened that morning. Derek Whitmore was what his department called a model officer. Clean record, commendations, community outreach awards. But what the department didn't track, or chose not to track, was a pattern that Marcus Johnson was about to experience firsthand. In the 3 years prior to this incident, Whitmore had been involved in 7 incidents at local businesses. Good 7 times he'd been called to handle disturbances. 6 of those 7 times involved black customers. Not one of those incidents resulted in an arrest. Not one resulted in actual criminal charges. But every single time the black customers left the establishment, this pattern should have raised red flags. It didn't. And that failure would cost everyone. It was 9:17 a.m. on Sunday, March 14th. Maggie's Diner sits on Clayton Avenue in Riverside, California. One of those classic American diners with red booths, chrome stools, and a jukebox that still works. On Sunday mornings, it's packed. Families after church, couples reading newspapers, kids drowning pancakes in syrup. Marcus Johnson, 41, is a high school history teacher. His wife, Tanya, 39, works as a pediatric nurse. Their daughter, Aaliyah, had just turned 8 the day before, and they'd promised her she could pick anywhere for breakfast. She picked Maggie's because of the chocolate chip pancakes. They walked in at 9:12 a.m. The hostess, a 19-year-old named Emma Hartwell, seated them in a booth near the window. They ordered drinks. Marcus got coffee, Tanya got orange juice, Aaliyah got chocolate milk. At 9:15, they placed their food order. At 9:17, Officer Derek Whitmore walked through the door. Marcus saw the uniform first. He taught his daughter early. When you see police, you wave, you smile, you show respect. So Aaliyah waved. Whitmore didn't wave back. He walked directly to the counter, spoke briefly with the manager, a man named Carl Dennison, and then both of them turned to look at the Johnsons' table. Marcus felt it immediately. That familiar sinking feeling. The one every black parent knows. The one they hope their children never have to learn. Tanya noticed too. She reached across the table and took Marcus's hand. "It's fine," Marcus whispered. "We're fine." But they weren't fine. Because Carl Dennison was walking toward their table, and Officer Whitmore was right behind him. "Folks, I'm going to need you to leave," Carl said. Marcus looked up. "I'm sorry? You need to leave the restaurant." Tanya leaned forward. "We just ordered our food. Is something wrong?" Carl shifted his weight. "Uncomfortable." "You're making other customers uncomfortable." The booth went silent. Marcus glanced around the diner. 2 elderly women at the counter. A family of 4 in the corner booth. A couple sharing a newspaper. Nobody was looking at them. Nobody seemed uncomfortable. "Which customers?" Marcus asked, in keeping his voice calm and level. "Sir, you need to leave." Whitmore stepped in now, hand already resting near his belt. "This is private property. The owner has the right to refuse service." Marcus did exactly what he taught his students to do in these situations. Stay calm, stay respectful, document everything. "Officer, we haven't done anything wrong. We're sitting here waiting for breakfast. Our daughter just turned 8. Can you please explain what's happening?" Whitmore's jaw tightened. I'm not going to ask again. Type badge in the comments if you think Officer Whitmore was already violating the Johnson family's civil rights, because what happened next made everything worse. 3 booths away, a woman named Patricia Morrison pulled out her phone. Patricia was 56, white, and a retired social worker. She'd been eating at Maggie's for 15 years. She'd never seen anything like this. She hit record. "Officer, please," Tanya said, her voice shaking now. "Our daughter is here. We paid for our drinks. We ordered food. We have every right to be here. Ma'am, if you don't leave voluntarily, I'll have to remove you." Aaliyah started crying. Marcus put his arm around his daughter, as fighting to keep his own anger in check. We're leaving. Just let us get our things." But Whitmore wasn't done. "You need to leave now, not in a minute, now." Marcus stood, reaching for his wallet to leave money for the drinks. "Hands where I can see them," Whitmore barked. The entire diner went silent. Marcus froze, hands halfway to his pocket. Tanya gasped. Aaliyah's crying got louder. And Patricia Morrison kept recording. "I'm getting my wallet to pay for the drinks," Marcus said, each word measured and deliberate. "I'm reaching into my back left pocket. I'm pulling out my wallet. I'm placing a $20 bill on the table." He moved slowly, deliberately, like he was defusing a bomb. Whitmore watched him, hands still near his weapon. Emma, the teenage hostess, was crying now too. Another customer, a man in his 30s, stood up. "Hey, what's going on? They didn't do anything." "Sir, sit down," Whitmore snapped. The man didn't sit. "I've been sitting here the whole time. They literally just walked in and sat down. What's the problem?" Whitmore called for backup. At 9:24 a.m., 2 more Riverside PD officers arrived, Officer James Chen and Sergeant Linda Martinez. And what they walked into would later be described in court documents as a family being terrorized for the crime of existing while black. Sergeant Martinez took one look at the scene and knew exactly what was happening. 8-year-old crying. Parents standing with their hands visible. White customers defending them. Patricia Morrison still recording. She'd seen Derek Whitmore's name on reports before. Always at businesses, always involving people of color. Never any charges. "Derek, what's the situation?" she asked. Manager called in a disturbance. Customers were asked to leave and refused. Martinez looked at Carl Dennison. "Sir, what was the disturbance?" Carl couldn't meet her eyes. Some customers complained. "Which customers?" Silence. "Which customers complained?" Martinez asked again. Here more silence. Martinez turned to the diner. "Did anyone here complain about this family?" The elderly women at the counter shook their heads. The family in the corner said no. The couple with the newspaper said they hadn't even noticed the Johnsons until Whitmore arrived. Patricia Morrison spoke up. "I've been recording everything. They did absolutely nothing wrong. If you're not subscribed yet, do it now. Stories like this don't go viral by accident. They need people who care enough to share them. Hit that subscribe button and let's make sure this family's story reaches everyone who needs to hear it." Martinez pulled Whitmore aside. The conversation was brief, and the body camera footage would later show Martinez asking pointed questions. "Who called this in? Did you witness any disturbance yourself? Did the manager identify a specific complaint? Are you aware this is the 6th call like this you've responded to in 3 months?" That last question made Whitmore's face change, because he didn't know anyone was counting. Martinez turned back to the Johnson family. "Sir, ma'am, I am so sorry. You are absolutely welcome to stay and finish your meal. There is no disturbance. There is no violation. You have done nothing wrong." Tanya was shaking. "We'd like to leave." "I understand," Martinez said quietly. "But I want you to know this is not okay. This should never have happened. And I'm going to make sure people know about it." Marcus just wanted to get his daughter out of there. They left without their pancakes. Aaliyah's birthday breakfast lasted exactly 12 minutes. Patricia Morrison didn't go home and forget about what she saw. She posted the video to Facebook at 10:03 a.m. By noon, it had 50,000 views. By 3 p.m., it had been shared 12,000 times. By Monday morning, it was on the local news. By Monday afternoon, it had reached the desk of Police Chief Raymond Torres. Torres had been chief for 8 years. He'd built his reputation on transparency and accountability. He'd implemented body cameras. He'd pushed for de-escalation training. He'd publicly committed to rooting out bias. And now he was watching one of his officers terrorize a family over pancakes. He made 2 calls. First, he called Marcus Johnson directly. The conversation lasted 47 minutes. Torres didn't make excuses, just as he didn't defend his officer. He apologized, acknowledged the harm, and promised action. Second, he called an emergency meeting with his command staff. Derek Whitmore was placed on administrative leave within 6 hours of the video going viral. The Riverside Police Department launched an internal investigation. The FBI opened a civil rights investigation. The California Attorney General's office requested all records related to Whitmore's service history. And what they found was a pattern that nobody had wanted to see. 7 incidents in 3 years. 6 involved people of color. Not one resulted in arrest, but every single time the non-white customers left the establishment. A department analyst ran the numbers. In Whitmore's 11-year career, he'd responded to 84 calls at local businesses. 67 of those calls involved Black or Latino customers. Only 17 involved white customers. The disparity was statistically impossible to explain by chance. But here's what made it worse. 4 different supervisors had reviewed Whitmore's activity reports over the years. All 4 had signed off on them. All 4 had marked him as satisfactory or exemplary. The system hadn't failed to catch this. The system had actively ignored it. Quick reminder. If this story is making you angry, that anger is valid. Channel it, hit subscribe, share this video. Let's make sure the next family doesn't have to go through what the Johnsons experienced. The investigation team interviewed the other families, a Latino couple removed from a coffee shop for loitering. They'd been there 15 minutes. A Black teenager kicked out of a bookstore for suspicious behavior. He was reading. An Asian family asked to leave a park for noise violations. They were having a birthday party at 2 p.m. Every single incident had Whitmore's name on it. Every single time he'd sided with the business owner. Every single time the family had left humiliated but without charges. Because that was the genius of it. No arrests meant no scrutiny. No charges meant no patterns in the data. No complaints filed meant no paper trail. Whitmore had found the perfect way to harass people of color without ever technically breaking the rules. Except he had broken the rules. He'd violated civil rights. He'd abused his authority. He'd weaponized his badge to enforce segregation in 21st century California. And now everyone knew it. And the Johnson family filed a federal civil rights lawsuit in June. Wait, they weren't the only ones. 5 other families joined the suit, then 8, then 12. The lawsuit named Officer Derek Whitmore, the Riverside Police Department, and the city of Riverside. It alleged systemic discrimination, failure to supervise, and violation of constitutional rights. The evidence was overwhelming. Patricia Morrison's video, body camera footage, dispatch recordings, service records, statistical analysis, expert testimony on racial profiling. The city's attorneys knew they couldn't win at trial. Settlement negotiations began in August. The families didn't just want money, they wanted change. They demanded mandatory anti-bias training for all officers. They demanded a civilian oversight committee with subpoena power. They demanded that Whitmore never work in law enforcement again. They demanded that the 4 supervisors who ignored the pattern face consequences, and they demanded the city admit wrongdoing. On November 3rd, the settlement was announced. $1.1 million divided among the 12 families. But more important than the money were the reforms. Every officer in Riverside PD would undergo 40 hours of anti-bias training annually. A civilian oversight board was established with independent investigation authority. All business-related calls would be reviewed monthly for patterns. Any officer with 3 or more similar complaints would trigger automatic review. The 4 supervisors who signed off on Whitmore's reports were demoted. And Officer Derek Whitmore was terminated. And his peace officer standards and training certification was revoked. He became permanently unemployable in law enforcement anywhere in California. At the settlement announcement, Chief Torres stood next to Marcus Johnson. What happened to this family represents a failure at every level of our department, Torres said. We failed to see the pattern. We failed to protect our community. We failed to hold ourselves accountable. That ends today. The Johnsons used their portion of the settlement to establish the Aaliyah Foundation, named after their daughter, dedicated to teaching young people their constitutional rights during police encounters. Marcus now travels to schools across California, teaching the same calm, documented response that saved him that morning at Maggie's diner. Aisha and Tanya works with families who've experienced similar discrimination, helping them navigate the legal system. And Aaliyah? She's 13 now. She doesn't remember all the details of that morning, but she knows her family fought back. She knows they won, and she knows that speaking up matters. Patricia Morrison, the woman who recorded everything, became an advocate for bystander intervention. Her video has been used in training programs across the country. Sergeant Linda Martinez was promoted to lieutenant. She now oversees the department's accountability division. Carl Dennison, the manager who called Whitmore that morning, lost his job 2 weeks after the video went viral. Maggie's Diner issued a public apology and donated $50,000 to racial justice organizations. If you made it this far, you care about justice. You care about accountability. You care about making sure this never happens again. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because we're not done telling these stories. Derek Whitmore moved to Arizona. He tried to get hired at a private security firm. The background check flagged the termination. He was denied. He works in construction now. He doesn't talk about his law enforcement career. The Riverside Police Department has made genuine progress. Complaint numbers from communities of color dropped 43% in the 2 years following the reforms. Use of force incidents decreased 31%. Community trust surveys showed measurable improvement. It's not perfect. No system is, but it's better. And it's better because one family refused to accept that being kicked out of a diner was just how things are. They fought back, and they told their story. They demanded change, and they got $1 million settlement, departmental reforms, and the satisfaction of knowing that Officer Derek Whitmore will never wear a badge again. This case was brutal, but what happened when a rookie cop pulled over a judge and had no idea who he was dealing with might be even more shocking. The traffic stop lasted 4 minutes. The consequences lasted years, and the fallout exposed corruption that went all the way to the mayor's office. Click here to watch that video. Watch.